discuss Greenland, Catalonia, Scotland, and Uyghurs. At the moment, now 9:15, those who are with us are Mr. Berdan Öztürk, member of the Turkish Parliament, of the Kurdish People's Democratic Party. Further, Mr. I need just my better glasses. I apologize for that. Mr. Dokun Isa, President of the World Uyghur Congress, and Mr. Adrià Guevara y Figueras, a Catalan politician and internationalist. He is the National Secretary of International Relations of the Republican Left, and he was also a member of the Catalan Parliament. So those are the three speakers who are here at the moment. We are still expecting, I have no news, Mrs. Aleka Hammond from Greenland, and also Gulchehra Hoxha from the Uyghur American Award, an American award-winning senior journalist. You know about?
Yeah, I know her, but
will she?
She was here yesterday, but this morning.
Okay. And Bahshat Masifi from the Kurdistan Democratic Party from Iraq, but I have no news about him. But anyhow, we will begin now, and getting into the basic questions. Of course, the main issue is how to define a self-determination. If we follow the international legal instruments, one may get guidance from the wording of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is a treaty, and at least officially and on paper it would be legally binding. And it defines self-determination in the following way, that people freely determine their peoples freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. So now the question is, does this only relate to the domestic situation, or does it also relate to the international status of a people living on a certain territory? And there are different schools of thought and very big controversies on that issue. It is much easier if it is confined to the domestic realm. That would relate to the question what kind of political system one chooses and how one administers the affairs. The other question is that of the international status of a community. And if we take the word political status, one can legitimately ask the question whether this does not also relate to how a people defines itself in the global context, and whether a people decides to organize its affairs in a constitutional way as a separate entity. But now let me ask, has any other of the speakers arrived in the meantime? Who is on the program? Not yet, so we proceed in this way. What is suggested is that each of the speakers on the panel will make a short presentation at the beginning, and afterwards we would discuss together the various points which the organizers, the World Forum, have put before us. And if this is acceptable, we could proceed in that way, and depending on who is ultimately present, we will discuss in more detail one or the other of the specific issues. Now we have a representation from the Kurdish people, from the Catalan people, and from the Uyghur people. So we could focus on these three issues in the discussion. So in this case, I just follow the list as it is presented in the program, which I think all of you also got, the list of the panelists. Mrs. Hammond is not...
One of the speakers,
Who is now arriving?
Yes.
One more chair, yeah. So we have our keynote speaker.
Yes, Gulchehra.
Just started in order not to be too late this morning. And I have already said that the main issue we should focus on is how to really define and understand self-determination. Does it only apply to the internal domestic situation or internationally? And does the term political status, which is used in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, really make sense if one only limits the term or the meaning of the term to deciding the political status domestically? Does it not also mean that the people should decide whether it will be organize itself in a sovereign manner as a sovereign entity or state internationally? And what I suggested is, also according to the program the World Forum has arranged, that the panelists present will make short statements initially, and after that we would go through the list of the questions which the World Forum has put before us. I think all of you have got this program, otherwise I can also read it out, namely the main questions besides the issue of defining criteria for self-determination. The main questions put before us are: with which vote may a new country become independent? 50.1%, or 2/3, let me just do it like this, or 90%. Second question: in case of establishing a new independent state, which rights must be ensured for the minority that wishes to retain the original citizenship and citizens' rights? And third question in that connection: how to protect the freedom of leaders who advocate independence? In which framework may they act legally? That is a very big issue and controversial issues in many states. The other area of questions relates to hybrid models, namely how can a commitment to state integrity and regional autonomy coexist? I myself from Tyrol, we have now around 100 years experience how to deal with that issue concerning South Tyrol and Italy, but and one might maybe even pay attention to this autonomy deal or package deal which Austria has concluded with Italy, through which the issue of South Tyrol was ultimately, at least peacefully, resolved. And so that is the suggestion coming from the World Forum. And may I now ask Mrs. Aleka Hammond, who was the first female Prime Minister of Greenland, who is a leading, who was leading a coalition government in the territory, in the autonomous territory, we can say, of Greenland, autonomous within the Danish realm, if I'm correct, hopefully.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe we messed up a little bit of the, speakers. I don't know. I
Yeah.
am Gülçehra. I am
Gülçehra,
Uyghur journalist.
she's-
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Because nobody.
Yeah. I was leading to another room also.
You are from. No, now this is clear. Yeah. I was.
Yes.
Because I have only seen some photos, but nobody identified. Thank you for telling me.
Should I?
So,
Yeah.
in this case, this means there is no one representing Greenland for the time being.
Yes.
And I was just mistaken by, because no one.
We are the
really
first
told me.
panel. It's understandable. Yeah.
So in this case, I invite Mr. Berdan Öztürk to make a statement. The organizers suggest 2 minutes for each person. I would say 5 minutes would be more realistic.
Okay.
Please, Mr. Öztürk.
Thank you. Do I need?
We have the mic.
You have one.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, distinguished panelists, dear audience. Thank you to you all for giving me this opportunity. Of course, I have 5 minutes. I'm going to keep it short. As our chair mentioned, of course, moderator, there are international rules, there are international conventions, and many international documents. They accept the right of self-determination. It's very important, of course, but it is not just always about the rules or laws. When it comes to countries, nation states, we very well know that within the nation states there are different nations as well. For example, in Turkey, when people demand their basic human rights, in the example of Turkey, we have been denied for a long time, and we have been struggling for a long time for our basic human rights. That's reality. That's the truth. I mean, when we apply to principled rules, international principles, we should be objective, not according to our political interests or our political future. The principle must apply equally to all nations, all communities. From our perspective, I'm going to just summarize our perspective as DEM Party and Kurdish people. Self-determination doesn't necessarily mean establishing a new state, a new nation state. It means that people should have a say over their language, their culture, and their history. This can be in different forms. I mean, it can be autonomy, it can be federalism, or any other democratic regime. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't have to be independent state or nation states. We have been fighting for this actually as a hot topic. I'm going to give the Rojava's example. As you know, in Rojava, the people from different nationality, ethnicities, from different religions, from different beliefs, they have been coexist for a long time in Rojava. It's an example. I mean, we can offer this example to the Middle East. As you know, of Middle East, they created nation state in the Middle East. This regarding the richness of the Middle East as what with regard to ethnicities and religious and beliefs. That's why we have many problems. We have been living in the Middle East, especially right now in Syria. What I'm trying to say, of course, the integrity of territory of a state, we can respect that. We should respect that. Sovereignty of the state, we should respect that, but we shouldn't forget that the state or centralized power should respect other ethnicities, should respect their rights, and improve democracy and equality. It's very important. What we are trying to achieve as in Turkey, our main goal is to live together, coexist together as one country, Turkey. But as I said, we have to accept accept each other, and we have to find a way to live, and it goes through democracy, as I said, justice, and of course equality. It's very important principles. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this introductory statement. And now I invite Mr. Guevara y Figueras to make his statement, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the moderation. Thank you to my co-panelists here today. And thank you to all of you, because I think it's very important that you chose this panel today, because it is a topic that is affecting lots of us and lots of regions and national states in the world at the moment. We live in very complex moments everywhere in the world, with this complexity that I was telling you about, this rising of the far right all over the world, also here in Europe, as we haven't seen it for almost a century. And this is affecting especially these nations that don't have a state. This is the case of Catalonia. I come from Catalonia. I have quite a long history as an activist, also as a politician in my country. A country that is located in Southern Europe, inside the state of Spain. But we have our own language, our own culture, our own identity, and our own feeling of being something different. And this, for me, is the key part. So for us, our view of self-determination, our view of independence is not being against anyone, not being against Spain in this case, but just being in favor of us being ourselves and being able to coexist and to share many, many things with Spain and with the European Union, but just existing as an independent state. And this is what we have been struggling for the past 300 years. So Catalonia fell into the Spanish kingdom in 1714, and since then we have had the feeling that we have not been treated well inside Spain. As my colleague said, they have not been respecting our own identity, our own language, our own culture. Catalan has been forbidden in different parts of this 300-year history of the Spanish rule of Catalonia. And this is still happening nowadays, with the Spanish state just denying the right to self-determination in Catalonia. You all saw it in 2017 when we had that referendum that was supported by over 80% of Catalan population. So about 80-85% of Catalan population wanted to vote, not to vote yes, but wanted to vote, and this referendum was denied. So it was performed without the permission of the Spanish central government by Catalan authorities, and you saw the result of that referendum. A massive support to the yes, but at the same time it led to repression. It led to police being in the street, just hitting the voters, just taking ballot boxes, and then led to very heavy sentences. The president of my party, Oriol Junqueras, who was the one vice president of Catalonia, was sentenced to 13 years of jail for organizing that referendum, taking into account that homicide in Spain is 9 years. So you see the difference of the sentence, and the president of that moment, Carles Puigdemont, remains still on exile. This is happening in Europe in 2017. We are still suffering these effects of repression in 2026. And I'm sure our reality is different to the reality of my colleagues here today, but we also have to take in mind that this is happening also close to the heart of the values that we think that we defend in Europe, right? And I will develop these topics further within the following question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Figueras. And I now invite Mr. Gojpun Issa, President of the World Uyghur Congress.
Thank you. I'm the former president of the World Uyghur Congress. I have to make correction. Yes, okay. Well, yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy today to see my good friend is Lobsang Sangay, former Prime Minister of the Tibet government, exile, Chimalai, and my friends Oman from Syria. Well, yeah, we are talking about the autonomy or self-determination and separatism. We are Uyghurs. We have to first, maybe some of you know who is the Uyghurs. Some of maybe know the idea of the Uyghurs. Yes, this is Uyghurs. We are living, we call our homeland is East Turkestan. Southwest part, northwest part of China. It is occupied territory. 1949, China's Communist Army and occupied these countries. Then after 6 years later, 1955, China's government guaranteed autonomy. It is means Xinjiang, official name Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Just last year, China's government celebrated 70 years so-called autonomy anniversary globally. But since the 70 years, we have never seen real autonomy. According to the Chinese constitution and the autonomic law, is 1984 Chinese government and adopted autonomic law. But this autonomic law, we have a lot of rights: linguistic right, religious right, and economic right, political right. But unfortunately, this is only in the paper autonomy. We have never seen the real autonomy. Even today, and if you see, is talking about this issue, Chinese government as the United Nations Human Rights Council or some other international form, China always trying to lie. Oh, Uyghurs have a right to speak in Uyghur language. You know, it's basic. It's according to Chinese constitution, is Uyghur language is the official language. Even if you see the Chinese money, even today, is a 5 language. One is Chinese, one is Tibetan, one is Uyghurs, and because there is a 5 autonomic regions so-called. But in the reality, since 2004, step by step, Uyghur language systematically eradicated from the society, from the school. Only Uyghur language you can speak at home. You know, at home. This is just the example. Religious right and economic right, and East Turkestan, it is very rich and natural resource. But today, Uyghur people is living on the poverty line of the internationally. Is rich country, is people is poor people, because all natural resource, and according to the constitution, the autonomic law, should be first benefit to the local populations, Uyghur, Kazakh, some other. But unfortunately, this all natural resource and the transport to the China, and there's no benefit at all for the Uyghur people. Politically, all administration is fully occupied by the China. Okay, governor of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is Uyghur, but there is no free elections. This is appointed by the Chinese central government, Chinese Communist. This should be Chinese Communist Party members, and should be educated. And these people should be show the loyalty Chinese Communist Party, central government, and Xi Jinping. Then is only these people coming to this level. So that's why all political body administration fully occupied by the Chinese government. So it is mean economically, politically, language, and culturally. Since 2014, particularly current President Xi Jinping took the power. This, and maybe you know, is the Chinese government is locked down more than 3 million Uyghur Kazakh to the concentration camp. We don't know where they are. Chinese government time to time change the narratives. At the beginning say, no, we don't have a detention center, we don't have a, this is a concentration lager, this is a concentration camp. We don't have a camp, but later UN, 2018, UN Committee, Racial Discrimination Committee, and review Chinese report. After that, China could not continue hiding the reality and change narrative. Yes, we have a camp, but it is the vocational training centers. We are training to the young generation for the better future. But it is so many intellectual, you know, politician, football player, and also so many, and singer in the concentration camp. And even some pensioner, like my mother, she was 17, 8 years old lady, she died concentration camp. 2018, she was staying more than 1 year in the concentration camp, and she passed away. So Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, so many international organizations, and the publishes report and Chinese government, and they change the narrative. We are fighting terrorism and radicalism. Yeah, this is the reality. So it is mean this autonomy meanings for the Uyghurs, mass determining camp, and enforced disappearance, family separation, more than 1 million Uyghur and Tibetan children and separate from family to the boarding school at the moment, you know? Yeah. And all religious symbolized, mosque is closed, destroyed completely. So it is mean just autonomy for the Uyghur, that's, as we say, just persecution and assimilation and also genocide at the moment. Self-determination, according to the international law, it is the law, it is the right. But some countries is the law. For example, is Catalan and also is some other countries, Scotland. At least these people have a right to the referendum. But for us, for Tibetan, for the Uyghurs, the Mongolian, this is a crime. Even you cannot talk on this. If you're talking on self-determination, it is a crime. It is a crime. Yeah. My time is fine. Thank you. Yeah.
I now invite Mrs. Gulshera Hoxha, Uyghur American senior journalist at Radio Free Asia. Please, Mrs.
Hello,
Hoxha.
everyone. First of all, I really, I should say sorry for the, letting you wait. And then thank you for being here and listening to us. As Dolkun Asa mentioned, in our country is Turkestan, so-called Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, genocide is still ongoing. So, as a Uyghur journalist, I believe we must be careful not to collapse these three different concepts into one: autonomy, self-determination, and separatism. I also came from East Turkestan, so-called right now Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, a region actually described as autonomous, but lack of autonomy. Also, China actually using that false autonomy to occupy our country. So self-determination is means people, according to the law, have the right to shape their political. As also Dolkonaisa mentioned, we don't have that kind of right and feature at all, because under China's false autonomy policy that has not been implemented to more than 70 years, it seems even more impossible for the Uyghurs who have been deprived of all their rights and to the self-determination. The term, the separatism, has been used by the Chinese government as a crime for its political purpose in exterminating Uyghurs. Even when you're thinking about self-determination or the freedom, you label as a separatist and even terrorists, as Dolkonaisa also the separatists at first, and the label to terror, me too. Just because what I'm doing, just doing my job in the US as a journalist, Chinese government label me as a terrorist. So also they targeting our family members to try to silence us. But we cannot, because this ongoing genocide is continuing silently. People are dying silently. children are also being targeted as assimilation silently, and the world seeing all those genocidal politics still going on in Uyghur region silently. So in this case, we cannot just be silent. Then we lost our hope for everything. So we have to speak out whatever the Chinese government label us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there seems to be consensus on one basic issue, namely that self-determination is an internationally recognized principle. The question is only how this will be interpreted and implemented in the different frameworks of the nation states. And to me, the big problem seems to be that quite often this issue of self-determination of peoples is handled or is situated in a very complex geopolitical framework, and that may be the reason why we see those double standards. In one case, certain countries take also the West. In one case, they would support self-determination even in the sense of secession, take Serbia. In another case, they would have a totally opposite position, and the big challenge is how to be at least intellectually honest and consistent on this issue. And that's why the organizers put before us this question first: what are the defining criteria for self-determination? Which autonomous rights are crucial? And one can also say self-determination is a general principle of international law. It is a basic human right. It's written in the Article 1C of the United Nations Charter, but also in Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And it may be implemented in different forms. A people in the territory of a certain state may reach consensus with the state establishment on its political and civil rights, and may be satisfied, so to speak, with the situation, for instance, in the framework of federal systems, which we have in different parts also of Europe. For instance, in Italy, there is the South Tyrolean people, which is a German-speaking people, and there is the Italian majority people, and there is a consensus now that through autonomy arrangements which are meaningful and which are not just formalistic, through autonomy arrangements, the self-determination of the people of South Tyrol is realized. In many other cases, that is not so, and people, even if their status is described as autonomous within a certain nation state, would say that the criteria for self-determination are not fulfilled. So that brings us to this second part of the question by the World Forum, namely which autonomous rights are really crucial. And maybe we can have feedback from the panel. Is it, of course, one may certainly be language in terms of cultural identity. Another one may be also regional self-administration concerning the local affairs. So a regional parliament, a regional government, which is of course not in charge of foreign policy and military affairs of the country, but which is in charge of all the matters in the particular area where the people live. And there are other aspects, depending of course always on the agreements that are reached with the national government, but there may also be special provisions for financial autonomy and for ethnic proportionality, so that in the regional institutions of government in a certain autonomous province, there is a guarantee that all the segments of the population are presented. And as far as the language is concerned, it's about teaching the language in the schools. We have experience as Tyrolians, our people were not allowed, they were not taught German during the period of Mussolini. Italian fascism wanted to Italianize the German-speaking people. So that is very essential to have to teach the language in the schools. But what is also important is that the civil servants in the particular region should also speak the language of the people, so that not only the language of the majority language of the state, and that means the language should be spoken in courts, which is very important, because otherwise people will feel helpless if they cannot follow the proceedings, and in all the public offices. So if you have any of the panelists would like to comment on that?
Okay, so yeah, you made quite a lot of questions. I will start with the first one and then get into the second part. So for us, self-determination is quite simple. It is just the right for people to decide their future and their political status, and to do it in a peaceful and a democratic way. And for us, this is a thing that should be easily understood by everyone. And this could be applied anywhere in the world, and this should be applied anywhere in the world. And self-determination does not necessarily mean independence, because when you have the right to self-determinate yourself, you have the right to choose, as I said, so you can choose amongst many other things. You can use your right to self-determination to decide to remain in the state that you are at the moment. Or you can use this right to choose a federal status or an autonomous status. Or you can use this right to choose to become an independent state. And this is what we Catalans are willing to do, right? And when we talk about self-determination, we talk it in a positive way. And that's why we as Catalans, we don't like the word separatism. Or we don't like the word nationalism either. Because we consider ourselves not separatists and not nationalists. Because for us, these words are excluding. We are pro-Catalan independence. We are pro-Catalunya, but we are also pro-Spain. We want Spain to live a happy life without us and coexist with us by our side. And this is the key. Separatism is division, is conflict. We don't want division. We just want a different kind of unity. When we become independent, we will keep sharing lots of things with Spain. Not only a border, but lots of economic relationships. We will be sharing the European Union presence. So that's why we want to use this word, because we want to keep these ties, and we want to construct it in a positive way. And for us, self-determination goes, as you said, about protecting our rights and our language and our culture. And despite we do have quite a high degree of autonomy in Catalonia, we have our own parliament, we have competencies in most of the fields such as health or education. We just think that's not enough. And we just think that we are not being protected enough. That's why we're going to go one step further.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Yeah, sure. For the Uyghur prospect, the Chinese prospect is as I already mentioned, is that we have a Chinese constitution, we have an autonomic right. But in some country, for example, you already mentioned Südtirol. Südtirol is also autonomic region. And 2010 or 2011, a couple of years ago, or former President Rabia Kadir and I, one Uyghur delegation, we visiting Sütrol, we learning. Because Sütrol is autonomic region, Uyghur is Xinjiang Uyghur autonomic region, but it's a big difference. We learn, we really saw is a true autonomy in the Sütrol. They have a, because Italian government is respects the all autonomic right, not only on the paper. But for us, maybe on the paper, Uyghur autonomous region or Uyghur autonomy is maybe more perfect than Sütrol autonomy on the paper. But in reality, it is the crime. When I was a students leader, pro-democracy students in the 1980s, 40 years ago, and we demand autonomic right, you know. Educational discrimination was happening at that time, linguistic discrimination was happening at that time, and we demand to the equality, right of autonomy. But because of this, I was house arrested, I was kicked out of university, I was not able to the university, you know. So I fell to the exile. Then we demand, according to the international law, we demand self-determination. No, we believe self-determination, as I say, is not crime. It is the right. But for the Uyghur, it is a crime. You cannot talk on this. That's why I was blamed, as Gulchakra already mentioned. What is in the sign, one of the top terrorists of the China list. 2003, China's government issues 11 individual, 4 Uyghur exile organization as a terrorist organization. Yeah. So, and that's why put my name to the Interpol Red Notice. And 21 years, I had been faced in Interpol Red Notice, and I was arrested so many countries. Because of the, I was a Secretary General, I was the President of World Uyghur Congress. World Uyghur Congress main mission is protect human rights, implement democracy, and the self-determination right, freedom for the Uyghur. This is the main key issue. Because of this, Chinese government blame is a terrorist, you know. Then I was detained even in my own country. I'm a German citizen, even Germany. Italy, 2017. And India, Taiwan, South Korea, even United States. I was detained, sent back. But we are continue fighting, all right? Today I'm free. My red notice was delayed 2018. But until from 1997 puts my name, and until delayed 21 years, whoa, I had faced a lot of problem. Yes, a lot of problem. And then not only pay the price myself, all family members, you know. I had 2 children in Germany. They are growing up, went to the school. They have faced a lot of discrimination by schoolmate and the classmate. Because no, it is so, at that time my children cannot explain themselves. Oh, a couple of years ago I talked to my children, say, Papa, no, I'm proud of you, but 10 years ago when I was a child, I couldn't explain, and I was discriminated by my classmate, my schoolmate. I didn't have a friend that time because Google, you Isa, you are the son, you are the daughter of the terrorist, you know? Yeah, we had such a problem. So it is mean crime, something like discrimination, not only on homeland, in the foreign countries. So that's why internal self-determination is impossible. Then question of the external, even statehood, right be and legitimately, come automatically.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings us to the second question, which the World Forum puts before us. In case of the exercise of self-determination by way of deciding on a new international status of the people, the question is, which vote may a new country, through which majority may a new country be created, so to speak, may become independent? And what the organizers ask is, would that be simple majority, qualified 2/3 majority, or 90% majority, what one calls nowadays often super majority? One can also look into history, how this has been handled, and here we have experience in Austria. since the time of the First World War, the border between Austria and Hungary is the result of a referendum in the border area. And that's why the line goes like this, with a bulge towards inside Austrian territory, and then continuing in the same line. And the reason is there was a dispute, a very tough dispute between Austria and Hungary in regards to the Hungarian population, people of Hungarian ethnicity living on the Austrian side of the border. Ultimately, that was resolved through an agreement between the two governments to hold a referendum in that area. And the result and the framework was a simple majority. And that is what happened. And as a result of this, the problem is settled now since 100 years. But it was the people who decided whether they wanted to belong to Austria or to Hungary. But in my view, it is almost a question that cannot be solved, namely whether there should be simple majority, a two-thirds majority, or almost 100% majority, namely at least 90%. Always, as it happens in any exercise of any right, if this is done democratically, always there will be a minority that will have to accept the majority decision, because if one requires 100%, there would never be any solution. So I think this dilemma cannot really be resolved, and one will have to deal with this in the circumstances. And the main issue concerning this international exercise of the right of self-determination will always be if two neighboring states involved in such an issue, if it is about two neighboring states in border areas, it needs an agreement between those two states what kind of majority would be required. Of course, it's a different issue if not two neighboring states are involved, but only one state which would give up a territory in favor of a new sovereign entity. And that is really the delicate situation. Another question that is put before us is the following. What rights must be ensured for the minority that wishes to retain the original citizenship and citizens' rights in the case of a use of the right of self-determination by way of what is called remedial recession, namely if people feels that their rights are not respected in any way, and for that reason they should exist in a new sovereign entity. And here I think one might say what would apply is exactly the same rules and regulations as would have applied for the people in its former nation state. The new entity will have to accord exactly the same minority rights or the same human rights, civil and political rights to the population that belongs to the country from which the territory will secede. I would not see any other way. And of course, the big problem we have seen now between Russia and Ukraine, there was an agreement about the so-called package deal, almost identical, by the way, to the deal between Austria and Italy concerning South Tyrol, namely a deal for granting autonomous rights to the Russian-speaking people in the east of Ukraine, and to establish and to do this also through establishing the state of Ukraine in a federal form. That was an agreement, and it was meant to be the basis for a peaceful settlement. in 2014, 2015. And I do remember, if I may just recall, that I had a discussion in the year when the last presidential elections took place in Ukraine with one of the candidates, Minister of Interior, and I asked the question, why do you not go ahead with implementing this agreement and establishing the kind of autonomous status for those territories, including recognition of language and so on, exactly the same way as was done for the Tyroleans. But the answer I got immediately was, this is totally out of the question, because it would challenge it would lead to the disintegration of the country. So this is another big issue and another big fear one must be aware of on the part of the national governments, that their reaction quite often is they will never consider a federalist structure because they can only think in the category of a centralized nation state. And for them, this is a threat to their to the very survival of the state. And it might be good to emphasize or to draw the attention to the experience of states that have existed since a long time in the form of federalism and that did not disintegrate. There are many states in Europe which are, or a considerable number of states, which are not centralized nation states, but federal states with regional governments. And there are also, and of course one of the examples would be, in particular would be Switzerland, but this fear is almost irrational and is very difficult to overcome. And unfortunately, that is my reading, this fear, as far as the Ukraine is concerned, is one of the reasons why this terrible conflict is going on and why autonomy has not been considered and implemented in the east of Ukraine.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. The other question is how to deal with the relationship or with these two main aims or principles. On the one side, the integrity, a commitment to the integrity of the state, and on the other, a regional autonomy. How can these two coexist? I would say that, I mean, some of the speakers have already explained to us how it is in their framework, whether it is Turkey or also the situation of the Catalans. But may I just ask, in terms of Catalonia, what your preference would be is to have an independent entity called the Republic of Catalonia, which somehow coexists with Spain. But could one envisage a kind of confederal state? I mean, a kind of loose cooperation, maybe similar to the structure now within the European Union. Both states, in case there would be independence for Catalonia, would be member states, for sure, of the European Union. And within this framework, would that not be envisageable? Not to have what one calls a federal state, but a kind of confederation. Two sovereign states, but with special linkage. So, yeah.
We are open to anything. The thing is that we want to vote. And in this vote, my party, we will defend full independence. But as you said, like, the rules of referendums are not clear. The Venice Commission does not set a specific question or a specific threshold. It has to be agreed on the procedure to make the referendum, right? So you have to agree on the question, and it has to be clear. You have to agree on the majorities, and it has to be clear. And the logic would say that 50 plus 1 should be enough, but anyone should be open to discuss a higher threshold if it is what is required to have the referendum. And then we should have the right to vote without any interference, as we had in 2017, when the context was not good enough to have like a clear and a peaceful vote. If in this negotiation with the Spanish state for the referendum, someone wants to introduce a third option and we should vote in between remaining into Spain, becoming full independent, or having like a federal status within the Spanish state, we might be open to that as well, because we are convinced that over 50% of the Catalan population would vote in favor for full independence. But that would not be a problem at all for us to introduce a third option, as long as the rules are clear and everything is clear beforehand. And of course we would remain members of the European Union, just as a matter of fact and as logic, because we are the most we're the richest region in Spain. We are in 2025 the region in Europe that grew the most, and it would be stupid for both Spain and the European Union to lose a region as Catalonia, and it would be weird because at the moment the 8 million people that live in Catalonia, we all have a Spanish passport, and this passport would not be taken out from us. So you cannot take passports out. So we would have like both the Spanish and the Catalan passport unless we personally give up on the Spanish passport. So what would be the logic to have a region in Europe where all the citizens, as Spanish as well, are members of the European Union, but the region per se is not a member? That would be not logic at all.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have no representation, no delegate from Greenland here today, but maybe it is of interest just to consider the situation in Greenland as far as the status of autonomy is concerned. Greenland already enjoys autonomy in coordination and in consensus with the government or with the state or the kingdom of Denmark. And according to what now is law within the Danish framework, it is up to the people of Greenland, if they wish, to decide in a referendum whether they would like to become independent or also whether they would like to join another state. But one thing must be very clear, because Greenland now has brought this issue to worldwide attention. The status of a territory can only be decided by the people. That is the idea of self-determination. It cannot be decided by outsiders or by other states. And people are not a commodity. You cannot sell. You cannot buy. In this sense, you cannot buy Greenland, because people. You can buy the natural resources, and you can buy the livestock or whatever. But you cannot buy a country if that country is inhabited by people, because if you do that, you deal with them as if they are a commodity, and that is the thinking or the mental attitude of an earlier era, of the feudal era, in fact. The feudal lord, he owned the land and the people. And I just make this point because this has now been in the discussions that one state, the most powerful state for the time being on earth, would consider to buy Greenland. And if they do not agree, it will just take it and integrate it into the sovereign realm of the United States. So that can never be considered, and it should be made really very clear that without a decision by those concerned, any action would be totally illegitimate and, of course, totally in violation of current international law, which is not a feudal law, at least on paper, and it would be a violation of the Charter of the United Nations. But the big issue concerning all these basic principles, the big issue is always enforcement and implementation, and that is the question we have also been asked by the World Forum: how to implement and secure these rights. And here one must distinguish between, as far as the law is concerned, between declarations and conventions. Conventions are legally binding because those are treaties that are ratified by the national legislature of all the states that have acceded to the treaty. So at least on paper they are legally binding, and that is the case for the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which includes in Article 1 the right to self-determination. But the big problem is, one can say it is legally binding, but how to implement it or how to enforce it in case it is violated. There is no world state, there is no world court that would have the authority. The International Court of Justice can issue an advisory opinion if it is asked to do so, for instance, by the General Assembly or the Security Council, but it cannot make a binding decision unless the involved states have conferred to it the jurisdiction. But even in that case, if they have conferred jurisdiction and the court would have authority, what will you do if the state that is that has to accept a certain measure just does not obey? There is no, and if that state is one of the 5 powerful states in the Security Council, never anything can be done, because that state, even when the Security Council would be authorized to implement it, because the Council could implement decisions of the International Court of Justice, but that powerful country can always block it through its veto. So that is the really big dilemma, and for that reason it is very important to make clear that unless we have something like an international rule of law, all these rights hang, so to speak, in the air, and everything is just left to the rule of force. And that is what now, anyhow, is very honestly and very openly emphasized repeatedly in many fora, including in the Munich Security Conference, by at least one member state of the United Nations. And we are admonished that we should better now adapt to this new situation and accept that it is the interests that rules, and that interests maybe will be negotiated and the spheres of interest and influence will be negotiated among the big players, and everybody else just has to follow and has to abide. As far as the program is concerned, yeah, we are also asked about international organizations, what their role would be apart from the United Nations. And here one might say maybe the only thing for the time being realistically that can be done is to use this method of name and shame, as it is called nowadays, also concerning matters of international crimes and international criminal justice, at least to speak out without fear about the actual situation or actual violations, so that there is public discourse. That is also now the big issue concerning, for instance, Palestine, another really almost intractable problem in terms of implementation of the right of self-determination. Through such a process of speaking out and naming, so to speak, the violations, gradually a global awareness may be created, and gradually this may influence the position of one or the other government. That, as far as I can see, is the only realistic way for the time being, as far as civil society and international human rights organizations are concerned. But I don't know if this is to be seen differently, or if the speakers would agree with that.
Uyghur
Please.
situation, I'm sorry. The the Uyghurs' reality is far from the imagination right now, because our even existence in threat. So in this case, how can we imagine self-determination? For us, like, we should, even right now, not fully recognized genocide, only recognized by 11, 12, right? Government and parliaments, not like fully. And in this case, also you can see the population in the Uyghur region before occupation is 3% Han Chinese living in Uyghur region, but right now become a majority, right? And we Uyghurs in our homeland becoming minority. So in this situation, this international law, how implement to our situation? This is also, you have to, you know, I don't know, we have to recognize the certain situation of this, you know, people or the so-called autonomous region to have the referendum. So how we can separate this issue to other countries or other nations face? Maybe Dolkonaisa have some idea to how to, you know, implement that to the Uyghur region or the Tibet, Mongolia, you know, it's very different.
Yeah, that's just the problem of changing of the demographic composition, because in such a case, a referendum may produce different results.
Yeah,
And
we have
there
to
are
have
cases of
specific international law to implement the people who, as like us, Uyghurs or Tibetan people, we all, you know, becoming the minority right now from our for our country. So,
Just one question, please.
Please.
Yeah, if I'm allowed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'm Zia Ferozpur. I'm an Afghan activist and journalist, Berlin-based. And so it's a very great opportunity to also bring a little bit of the case of Afghanistan, because however it is a territory under the control of the current regime, the Taliban, but there are also issues in regards to territory, self-determination, also the minorities. So you have been an exiled journalist and Mrs. Bulchera with a very rich experience. So if you wanted to say something to us as we being new exiled journalists and activists here in the Europe and countries like United States, so what lessons can you, for example, give to us that if we wanted to continue our advocacy, because there are also issues in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is currently ruled by one group, which is Taliban, with majority of the Pashtuns. But within the context of Afghanistan, there are Tajiks, there are Hazaras and Uzbeks and others, and their rights unfortunately not being recognized. Our languages are not being recognized nowadays in our region. For example, the case of education to our women and the culture issues, for example, our celebrations like Nowruz, they're all being funded. So you have been advocating from United States and other countries. What can we do here to promote these principles? Thank you very much.
thank
Would
you
you like to
for
say something?
thank you for asking this question. But as a Uyghur journalist, my entire, you know, career, the work actually only target Uyghur region, Uyghur people. That's why I don't have enough awareness about, you know, the enough information about certain situation of Afghanistan. But as a journalist, I can say journalism today have such a huge role in the, you know, international peace, and also bring peace to the countries. But journalists also being targeted by those perpetrators because of the truth, the reality, it threatening their policy. So I think in the Taliban regime also you don't have freedom of media, I think. So we facing the same sometimes. But also our how we our determination also comes from the truth, comes from the people. If we don't have a source, we don't have news. So we have to educate people to speak out, to give the information. Even in Uyghur region, their life in threat. But people find a way to reach out outside, media, to give the information. That's why world now know what happened for the Uyghur people, what's happening in the Uyghur region. Even Chinese government turned Uyghur region as such a, like prison, like open prison. But still, people are very smart, and it's like natural right to speak against the atrocity, speaking against the, injustice. So we have to use people's power. So we need to educate people what is true media, what is the role of media for their life, for the future, for even the world. So many people right now doesn't believe medias, because of also the perpetrators using media to propaganda. So that's why we have very big conflicts from the free media to those country doesn't have a media. So the key is also the people. If people know, people believe, and media can work. If people doesn't believe, and then we cannot say anything about the future. Yeah.
Please, would you like to?
I have a question for you about Rojava in particular, because right now the situation, and I'm speaking as a Syrian myself, right now we have a situation where the authorities in Damascus and in Rojava have signed an agreement, and according to this agreement there will be full linguistic and educational rights granted to the Kurdish population in Syria, as well as a measure of local administration in Qamishlo, Hasake, Kobani, participation in the army, in local sort of security arrangements, and the granting of Syrian citizenship again to the 300,000 to 500,000 people, Kurdish citizens who have been deprived of their citizenship since the Ba'ath Party took over in the 1960s. So are these kind of arrangements sufficient as far as fulfilling Kurdish aspiration in Syria, or do you think there is more yet that needs to be considered?
Thank you so much for your questions. Just let me give you a brief information background about Kurds. After the First World War, we divided between 4 countries: Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. Our estimated population in these 4 countries, it's about between 40 and 50 million. We are talking about 40 and 50 million people that divided between 4 countries. It's a fact. It's a fact. And of course, Kurdish people are oppressed in 4 countries. They denied their identity, their language, their culture. Still it is. In some countries, they don't accept us as Kurdish, or they don't accept our language, like our Uyghur friends told about the situation in China with regard to China. In Syria, we have to find political solutions, not just for Kurds, because there are Syriac, there are Alawis, there are Druze, Shias, Sunnis. I mean, we have to find a political solution for the future of Syrian people, not just for Kurds. It's not just for Kurds. Our struggle, it wasn't just for Kurdish people, as you well know, you're from Syria. Syria Democratic Forces consist of many Arabs, Arab tribes, Syriacs, and Alawi as well, and Druze as well. Of course, we need a constitution, but constitution is not imposed by the central government or by a group. This constitution must be made by the people of Syria. Doesn't matter it is Kurds or Druze or of course any other ethnicities or religion or beliefs. It doesn't matter, but they have to decide their future. We have to help them to decide their future, and that what has been done in Syria since 2011, we know very well. Millions of people affected because of the Assad regime, mentality of the Assad regime. It is not just about the Assad regime. Now in Iran we have a mullah regimes. In Iraq we used to have a Saddam regime, Baas regime. I mean, we have to change this mentality. We have to improve, respect each other, improve our democracy, and we have to live equally. Our Afghan friends ask a question. It's not about Afghanistan. It's not about Uyghurs. It's not about Catalan, Basque, or Kurds. We have to, yes, of course, we have to protect, defend humankind's values. Doesn't matter my political party, doesn't matter my ideology. I have to fight side by side with you and with our Catalan friends and Uyghur as well. If you divide these values between us, then we are going to fail. All of us going to fail. Thank you again for your questions.
And with this important warning of the dangers of double standards concerning these basic rights, we will conclude our session. We have exhausted the time, and the schedule, as I see, is very tight. Now there will be another program and the book presentation by Geoffrey Robertson about international crimes. Somehow it also relates to what we have been discussing here. And I thank all the panelists for their participation and important contributions. And I apologize for the shortcomings because we did not know who will actually be present, and we had no control over the circumstances. I am sorry for that. Thank you. Thank you.